The Spin-Off Podcast Network.
Raising capital or taking your business to the world? Investment Fix has everything you need to make it happen. This season, we're exploring the US market, the opportunities it offers, what it takes to grow a business there, and the best way to approach investors. The Investment Fix podcast. Tune in today.
The Fold is brought to you by O Media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. Mai hoki mai kia The Fold, e mihi ne ko Duncan Greive toku ingoa. My guest today, I've been wanting to do this podcast for a long time, and honestly at various times I've been sort of like, oh, I'm not ready. I don't even know if I was, but these are two absolute heroes of mine and icons of journalism. I'm talking about Annabelle Mather and Mihingarangi Forbes, who, you know, they're a duo who have worked together for, I think, at least 15 years now, across multiple different shows and projects. You know, that you often see this in broadcast journalism where there is a producer and presenter who sort of stick together, you know, throughout different eras of a show or even different projects, but few achieve the longevity or the kind of breadth of output and that Annabelle and Mihi have. But you know, like that is only kind of a part of the reason I wanted to speak to them. It's also because if you ever get the privilege of talking with these wahine, it's just a really, really good time. They're very funny, they're very smart, they're very fearless, and I think all of that comes across in this conversation. You know, a lot of people listening will already know who they are, but basically both of them were journalists. Annabelle, sort of foundational at Whakaata Māori Television, and Mihi coming in through, through being a long time part of the sort of 3 News Campbell Live team. But they sort of came together around the start of that golden era at Whakaata Māori that we discussed with Dr. Jim Mather on The Fold a few weeks ago, and they really drilled sort of further into that. What a sort of a magical, lightning in a bottle time that was when TV audiences were still huge, and you know, there was this huge energy and passion for the opportunity that channel represented and still does, but that fundamentally, you know, the world has changed, audience behaviour has changed, and there was just a real sweet spot before the internet started to really decay audiences and fragment them that they got to work through. But, there is a sort of a subtext I was thinking about as we spoke, that is they were sort of always swimming upstream, you know, so they started as kind of correspondents on network side shows, then ultimately after a pretty hard, pretty traumatic uncoupling with the network over the Kohangareo stories, they went and started The Hui, which was an independent production that sold into 3, is still going, a fantastic Māori current affairs show, and then ultimately went upstream again to start the Aotearoa Media Collective, which is its own independent production company, but which makes shows for RNZ and others. But it's also more than that, you know, like they've done really beautiful and important work in the education space, which, you know, as Mihi said, is really difficult, but also, as you know, feels incredibly important and purposeful. And so they've been around a long time, but it also, when you speak to them, there's still so much passion and a kind of a youthful energy about them that I kind of feel like they're just getting started in some way. But look, this is a conversation that covers the breadth of their careers, naturally talks about some of the people that made that happen, but also the way that their experiences within various institutions along the way, have kind of told the story of how, a Māori approach to journalism and current affairs has gone from being something that is really difficult, and I think it still is in a lot of ways, but is just that has dynamically changed within large parts of our media, and I think a lot of that change has been driven by the likes of Annabelle and Mihi and others from their generation who just did a lot of very hard, staunch, important work to make it happen. So, really, really thrilled to have the pair of them on this episode of The Fold. Tēnā kōrua, and thank you so much for coming on my humble little podcast, The Fold, this morning.
Very excited to be here.
Very excited. It's a very humble podcast, but what a grand building you're in.
It is
incredible.
It is. It's a bit too bouge, but we tried to find something appropriate for us, but we failed, and so here we are, struggling to pay rent.
It's the former council chambers, is it?
That's correct. Yeah, the Mount Albert City Council, right through, right behind you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love the history.
Me also. So one thing that struck me when I was prepping for this was that I was trying to think of, it's a little bit name a more iconic duo, but like a duo who have worked together for as long and as consistently as the pair of you. And I wanted to start where that started. Like, how did the Bells and Mihi show begin?
Well, we have names for ourselves. We are sometimes the Kath and Kim. Other times we're... Eddie
and...
Patsy. And when we're on the road, we're Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
We just morph into these different characters. It's lots of fun. But yeah, we met, we obviously knew of each other, as you do when you're journalists, like, oh, that's Annabelle. And that's Duncan before I met Duncan. And he works over there and he does some stuff over there, that kind of stuff. So I was at... TV3. I was at TV3 for a long time, and probably for that period of time in my 30s, would have just been mostly my late 20s and 30s. And Bells was at Rui Mai and then at Māori Television. So, and I was doing Māori kind of content, if you like, through Campbell Live All News. So we just bumped into each other on different kaupapa around the motu, or didn't bump into each other, but then listen to each other's stories or watch them for research and those kind of things. But we actually have a bit of a story when we first met him.
Yeah, I knew who Mihi was, and I've told this story lots of times, but basically I was very resentful towards Mihi because she keeps scooping me. I keep thinking that I had stories like all lined up that I was going to break, and then Mihi would like swoop in and kick my ass, and I was like, that damn Mihi.
That's
Forbes.
Annoying.
Yeah, but do you know, I had the weight of a massive platform, and that's truly what it was about.
And then one day I heard she was in Auckland, and me and her were having this East Coast, West Coast beef. No, you hadn't moved up yet. And it was time to like throw down and just have a massive dance off. So I rang her and said,
I was actually terrified. I was like, fuck, what does she want?
So you reached out to her?
No, she didn't reach out. She demanded that after I finished, I come outside and hop in her big car and go and sort some stuff out.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, ooh.
And we went to the pub, which also had a TAB attached to it in Newmarket. It was right across the road from Māori Television.
Was Larry Parr there?
Larry Parr turned up for one part of it.
Weird.
Yeah. And we had a little cordial with him. But basically that's how our friendship started. And then later Mihi moved to Auckland. She was still at Campbell Live, but her tamariki started in the same school as mine at Newton Central. And then eventually Mihi came over to Māori Television, and that's when we really started to be able to work together. And
I felt like really loyal to Campbell Live. It was such a very loyal team. But when Carol Hirschfeld announced she was off to Māori TV, I was like, what the actual... No, that was my move. And she was like, I'm off to Māori Television, everyone. I was like, I can't fucking believe this. And I was very quickly off to Māori Television after that. I was like, yeah.
I asked Jim about this a few weeks ago, but I feel like that era of Māori television, and because it was during a period when television was still this kind of unimpeachable God mode information system, and you had these kind of people coming in from like yourselves and Carol. Like, what was the sort of atmosphere like? And obviously the way it ended, we'll get to. But let's talk about the good times first.
I think Māori television just happened in this perfect bubble. Like, we caught the last of the golden period of television before the advent of like streaming and online and all of that stuff. We had been absolutely shitbagged to death by like Rodney Hyde and many others before we got on air, so there was really low expectation about what we could do. We could only go up from there. And we ended up sort of having this drive that we were the little station that we were going to take on the big guys, that we were going to punch above our weight and be a world-class Indigenous broadcaster, and we were going to unite with other Indigenous broadcasters to uplift our people. So there was this really strong, united sense of what it was that we were trying to achieve. And so that built a really tight culture within our organisation, and a belief that, we were here to serve our people, and that's something that speaks to all Māori. So I think that it was because of that mentality that we were able to create the amazing programming and kaupapa that we did.
I think because I worked at ATN in the 1996, was it? Lasted for about 10 months or something. And so that was quite traumatic. We all lost our jobs. And
what was ATN?
Aotearoa
Television network. It was the pilot for a Māori channel.
So we were set up in Parnell, and Tūkoroirangi Morgan and Morihu McDonald, Robert Powhare, Tāwini and Puhi, they were directors, and it was completely underfunded, and every day was an absolute struggle. And people just ran out of wind, really, because you're doing 5 jobs, like literally 5 jobs. I think I was the head of children's programming, the news reporter, did some current affairs at the same time. Honestly, it was all over the show. But it's just because there was no money. And then, setting up all your editing and all that kind of stuff. So that was really turned me off the government's promise of, supporting a Māori television network. But I remember when Māori TV started, and I think I was probably still home with Te Ahi Pourewa, my second, and I was just so proud, and it just looks so different from ATN. I was like, oh, hang on, this one looks good. And then, then I think Māori television at the beginning was everything. I think we probably started to talk about telling stories through a Māori lens at that stage, because that's when we truly were able to tell them, because people like me and Carmen and Shannon and Scott and Campbell and that, we were working and trying to tell stories through a Māori lens, but it was virtually impossible because our environment was so not Māori and just incapable of understanding where we were coming from. So there were blocks all the way through up to the editors. It was every day was like going to war. So Māori television was everything that you wanted to be. And like I said, I wanted to go earlier. And actually, I didn't know Jim Mather until way later, but every time I saw him, he said, hey, when are you coming over? And I'd be like, wow, this guy keeps asking me to come to Māori television. He doesn't even know me. And so, he was just really good at handpicking really good Māori throughout the industry, and smiling at the other bosses and shaking their hand and like stealing their people through the back door. So when I first came to Māori television, it was everything. It was everything you could ever want. It's everything you could ever have imagined it was. And the environment was like home.
I remember when Carol's porphyry happened at Māori Television, and Mark Jennings got up and he talked about how when Māori Television was established, three were excited because they thought, cool, here's a great training ground for all of these Māori journalists that we're going to be able to come through and pick off. And he's like, but that didn't happen. And he's right, like, it was a one-way door. Like, people, like big people, you know, high-profile, experienced, amazing people were coming into Māori television, but it was literally about 10 years before anyone went from Māori television over to mainstream because, you know, it was just such a fulfilling, inspiring, amazing place to work.
It was safe. So the reason they don't go the other way is because it's unsafe, and those environments are unsafe. So Māori television was a place where you could train, where you could make mistakes, but you would never make a mistake out there, only in the office, because you had so much cultural knowledge and support wrapped around you, and then some really great journalists as well who had trained, you know, in RNZ and all that, like the Wena Harawiras and that, you know, that were the staples in there. It was, it was the perfect environment, I guess. It was the dream.
I mean, it sounds like this kind of ideal. One thing that you know, and obviously it also, like most perfect situations, they end. One thing that I'm curious about, because it seems to speak to that ending, is I feel like politicians always have a strange relationship with the media, and particularly with sort of media that they can have at least a funding influence over in some respects, that they have this idealized vision of it in their mind, and they almost, like, they close their eyes, they can imagine like their great policies being applauded, and then suddenly it's like, hang on.
But also banking on the fact that Māori didn't understand governance. So the governance structure of Māori television used to be the Electoral College or something like that, where
Te pūtahi pāho.
I think it was Bill English. What was he? Was it State Services?
Bill English was the stakeholding minister.
So they could elect some representation on the board, and then, you know, it was a whole lot of other myriad of representation on the other side. And I think they thought that those people were going to work for them and act for them, and eventually, possibly the government side did, but eventually the other side kind of got smarter, you know, started to actually represent the people that they were there for.
So, I mean, you've talked at length and about the Kohanga saga, and I don't want to sort of relitigate that, but I do want to kind of for you to talk about what, you know, given just how idyllic it was for quite some time there, what a trauma it must have been to the pair of you to kind of go through that, and sort of, how you process that, and then ultimately picked yourselves up and poured yourselves into something new in the hui.
Probably less for me, because I wasn't a day oneer like Annabelle. So, you know, she's Māori TV was her baby kind of thing. And I felt very privileged to have come along, and you know, I actually came to produce Te Kaia, the news, and then Julian left, and then there was no one to fill his place, and it was me. I always say that I'm just kind of a current affairs presenter that just kind of stumbled. You know, it was never something I wanted to do. It was just something that there was no one else to do. So, it was such an incredible team, and the opportunity to do them. I remember doing I can't name the people, but you know, like really top Māori's public servants, and them, you know, doing the old, I don't need any research, don't need any comms, this will be easy. And then, you know, just with the kind of research we had prepared, absolutely flooring people in interviews. And because it was live, you know, you could see their eyes and thinking, oh, wow, this is kind of just like the other guys now. I'm going to be challenged, and I'm terrified, and I need to be more prepared next time. So I think we as a team, we just became so much stronger in terms of our journalism together, and more confident, and felt we gave probably each other the confidence to ask the tough questions or take on the hard stories. But we did know, like some of our politicians, I think, had they had some more experience as being politicians, they would have expected that, but some were fairly new, and the way that they reacted was interesting. Yeah, I think even our politicians have come a long way now in terms of the way that they respond to some of the stories. But yeah, for me, it was really just disappointment because the whole management had changed at Māori Television and changed for the worse. We had like a leader who operated as an individual and very close to the governance side of the organisation and less, holding hands with us. And in fact, sometimes I felt like he was my enemy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I kind of knew that was all going to come. And then the hires that came afterwards, you kind of expected, you could see
The thumb
where
was
it
on the
was going.
scale.
I was like, this is not going to turn out well for me or for us, because there was a real push to stop the kind of journalism that we're doing. Yeah, a real interference. It was interference.
I think it's not overstating it to say that it became a very hostile environment, and it was basically over the course of a year. Like, Jim left as CEO. There was a whole lot of drama around the recruitment of the new CEO, and you might recall that once a preferred candidate became obvious, that the staff signed a petition trying to encourage the board not to go through with that hire for various reasons, and then it all got put on hold, and then it started up again, and that candidate ended up coming through, and then so we kind of could see over the course of about a year that the writing was on the wall in terms of where governance stood, where our leadership stood. The person who became CEO gave a number of interviews publicly criticising our journalism and stuff. So there was an air of inevitability, but I was in denial about it for a long time. I was like holding on to hope that it wouldn't be so, and that maybe this was just a rough period and we'd all get through. But that didn't happen. So it was a really difficult thing to leave, and I went through a big grieving period and all of that. But it actually ended up being, I think, a blessing, because it pushed us into a new space.
Well, it forced us to, put on our big girl pants and get on with it. And sometimes, and I think about this when I think about people who've worked at TVNZ or something for like 25 years, and I'm thinking, that's so interesting, because would I have worked at TVNZ for 25 years had I not been pushed out, or because I've actually been made redundant 3 times in my career. So I was thinking, would I have stayed if I had like a cushy job? And I was kind of, maybe I would have, but I'm so glad I haven't been, because there's just so much to learn from being forced out.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible. It's a big spiritual awakening, and like it actually affects you physically as well. Like, you actually feel physically sick when that kind of stuff happens to you, and your whole family feels like that. And sometimes I've actually got people in my family who are still angry and who still won't give stuff up or won't talk to people. I'm kind of okay with it. I'm not okay with a couple of people, because I've really worked through this, and I've thought, do I have to be zen and, all those things that people say, let it go, give it up. And I think, and then someone said to me, actually, you don't have to think about them or do anything. You just don't have to, because, what people did to you, like specifically to us too, was so wrong. Yeah.
So you go, and so like, what was the timeline? Did the hui start immediately, or was there?
No. So when this is the problem for Māori women or people of minority or whatever, is that the phone doesn't ring. Like, you quit, and then you think
There'll be a queue.
Someone's going to be like, hey, I've got a great idea. Come and make current affairs over here. We're going to give you your own show. I mean, you think...
Or just a job.
Yeah.
Or just a job, do you want to come and do some
It seems
field
unnatural.
directing?
You'd feel like you'd proven
Yeah.
yourself, and you were kind of in your prime. You still had like decades of good journalism to go. You're well recognised. You'd won some international award as well, you know, we'd done all that. But yeah, at that stage, the mainstream platforms just were too nervous, I'd say. So I went to RNZ to get some money to live, and I thought it'd be a good idea to learn a little bit while you're out there on radio. And Belle's kind of did some contracting work at Great Southern, but we had already decided that we were going to put something together we thought, no, the world's ready for a Māori current affairs show. If it can't be at Māori Television, then it's got to be somewhere else, and we're going to work all of our contacts to make it happen. And then but we couldn't make it happen just with two Māori women who'd never run a business before, you know, because that's just not going to get funded.
Was that a decision you made, or was that sort of conveyed to you somehow?
It kind of felt like it was conveyed to us, eh?
Oh, well, for me personally, like I had no experience of the independent production sector, so I just didn't know how anything worked. I had no idea how to get anything over the line. So we knew that we needed some...
But we knew we needed some structure as well, that we needed to, you know, find somebody to kind of... alongside us.
The thing is, me and Mihi have been quite lucky that we have had this sort of quiet fairy godmother in the background of our career, which is the wonderful Annie Murray, who she was the one that suggested when Julian left Native Affairs, hey, why don't you get Mihingarangi to present? And we were like, oh my God, what a genius idea. The answer was right in front of us. And then when I left Whakaata Māori and was very pregnant and very unemployed and very unemployable, Annie had been doing some work with Great Southern Television. She was a commissioner at Prime then, and she suggested that I do some work, some Māori consultancy work with them, and that's how our relationship developed with Great Southern.
With Phil Smith.
And as Mihi had said, we knew that at the time, part of the grief was I felt like my career in current affairs had ended and I wasn't ready to do that. I felt like I still had more to offer as a journalist. So
we knew we had good contacts. You know, Mark Jennings has always been a really, strong supporter of our work. So we kind of off we went to see Mark. Mark, would you give us a show? Mark, would you back us for a show? And, TV3, worked on a smell of an oily rag, so there was never any money. But he was interested, he wanted to support us. But we needed to find somebody who could help us, put the props together to understand how to budget and all that kind of stuff. So Phil,
a doer of deals.
So Phil
Smith,
and then rolls in Phil Smith, and I used to work with him back at TV7 back in the day. And honestly, Phil, he's an old journo that just loves being an old journo.
He does.
And the idea of having a current affairs show on his slate, I think. Yeah, he was so excited about that. And like Phil, honestly, he's of course we can make that happen yesterday kind of guy. So he was perfect in that situation. And Mark knew Phil, and everyone seemed to be happy. And we got funded, and we were like, thank God, because there was not a plan B.
Yeah, and Great Southern has been an amazing refuge for us post Whakaata Māori, because, they really empowered us to make our own decisions. There was never any editorial input or control or anything like that. They've always been super supportive of our ambitions and our ideas. And to be honest,
TV3 were really hands off with us too.
Yeah.
They just respected that we knew what we were doing. We've got a good lawyer. Some very minor changes every now and then, but other than that, it was 7 years of whatever we produced.
The Fold is brought to you by O Media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa, with over 4,000 out-of-home advertising sites nationwide across both street furniture and retail centres. I'm super grateful to O Media for enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today.
Raising capital or taking your business to the world? Investment Fix has the lowdown on everything you need to make it happen. This season, we're exploring the US market, the opportunities it offers, what it takes to grow a business there, and the best way to approach investors. Join some of the superstars of the investment and business world as they share advice from their time in the US so you can make your mahi count in this massive market. The Investment Fix podcast, brought to you by Invest New Zealand. Tune in today.
It's interesting, right? Because I think for a lot of people who are more on the audience side of current affairs, they wouldn't necessarily understand, I certainly didn't, the distinction between a show which is made in-house and versus one that comes through an independent production company. And that's what the Hui was. And so when once that thing's up and rolling and you're, for you, Mihi, back at, in the 3 News environment in some respects, what was it like working, what had changed around in some ways in terms of how the, quote unquote mainstream environment for Māori current affairs?
I was in the driving seat. I don't know if TV3 would have given me, well, they wouldn't. Otherwise, they would have contacted me and said, hey, Mihi would be great. And that's the thing about opportunity, right? Like, if you don't get it, then you don't know if you're going to be good. I didn't know I was going to be able to do current affairs. It was only because Julian left and I kind of got forced into doing it. And I was absolutely terrified. And poor old David England had to come and tell me how to talk into a microphone and all those kinds of things. And honestly, it was, you just learnt with Annabelle in my ear and things like that. And so that was just sheer opportunity that turned out that actually we're quite a good team and we can make some good current affairs. And so through, the investment that Great Southern made with us and our relationship with them and all the hard work, we found out that actually we can make current affairs by ourselves outside of a platform and deliver to them. But I think that's everything that we've been talking about in all these last couple of years with the reviews and stuff. Is the problem is the lack of opportunity for diverse groups of people. Because if you gave people an opportunity and just gave them a go, you'd probably find out that they could be quite brilliant. But yeah, so it was really different for me because I went back in a really powerful position. That I was the presenter, if you like. And my mate was like the producer of a big current affairs show that wasn't big at the time, but, it was pretty solid and people watched it and it got lots of national attention at times. And it was a very different relationship with TV3 where I had only 10 years prior to that, punching up all the time, trying to get my stories onto a program, trying to keep my one line in a story and arguing with my mate Kim Haring all the time, and she'd be writing somewhere else and I'd be, nah, it needs to go in like that, and she's like, I don't know about that, That's the kind of level of where I was trying to have fights with well, not fights, but just trying to make a difference for our people. And now I was driving the microphone and the editorial and the content and all the ideas with my mate Annabelle. And everyone else in the team, obviously. But
can we just quickly return to RNZ? Mihi, how would you kind of characterise your time there? Obviously, Kiritapu Allen was recently kind of made news for a,
I just got to go and get my husband so he can do like my farewell speech. He'd never do that. Look, it's hard to talk about RNZ and not end up in the news. And I'm really aware that I didn't do exit interviews or do big interviews about RNZ because I want to keep working in the industry. And I do respect a lot of people at RNZ, and I enjoyed my time there. And I felt like we achieved some really cool things, like with Shannon and I, and even Carol back in the day when she was there, and with the support of Paul and Mary and Brent. That's where the whole reo stuff kind of started. And now look at RNZ, like everyone's speaking Māori all over the show. It's like, if you can't say a 1 minute intro in te reo, then get off. That's how RNZ is. So I'm super proud of that time there. But in terms of structural change, I don't think a lot's happened. And I think that's probably, I just talked about opportunity, right? And so there's so many incredible people that could have an opportunity at RNZ. And I bet, they would be amazing. And I bet you'd, over 6 weeks or so, you'd get used to hearing them in your ear doing Checkpoint or Morning Report, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, that person's actually incredible. I love the way that they come at this interview. It's so different, to what we've heard before. But I don't think people get enough opportunity at RNZ when you're Māori or Pasifika and people might say I'm speaking out of turn, but that's my experience.
This is not kind of core to it, but it is related. This has been an uncommonly activist government in the media space broadly. A lot of intent, not always a lot of execution, but they clearly care about the sector more so than some other governments have recently. One thing that caused a lot of concern was the Māori media shift a few years ago, and I remember speaking to you, Annabelle, at the time about what a kind of perilous kind of inflection point that was. Do you want to talk about, because I think there has been a lot of evolution in terms of the relation between Māori media and the media more broadly, why that moment kind of represented, such kind of danger in some respects for the Māori media sector?
I think that what programs like the Hui have showed is that working within the independent production sector can create really great opportunities to have strong Māori programming on mainstream platforms. And the value of that is that as ratings decline everywhere, but specifically at Māori Television, it means that the money that's getting poured into this programming is hitting more eyeballs and therefore more bang for your buck. And also it creates balance across the mainstream media landscape to have significant Māori programming on these different platforms like at 3, like at TVNZ, like at RNZ. So the danger of centralising everything at Māori Television means that not only are you restricting your viewership, but not everybody wants to work at Māori Television. Not everybody has the ability to be able to drive or the desire to drive all the way out.
On my bike. I wouldn't get there on my bike.
So at a time where everyone was talking about the importance of plurality of voice, why we would think that the exact opposite would be the solution for Māori media makes absolutely no sense. Of course, plurality of voices is much better than a single voice. And so, the first iteration of the Māori media sector review that came out, we were obviously really concerned about it because while everybody else was getting to have more diversity of ideas and platforms and programming and content, we were basically getting stuck into one little box, and so that caused widespread concern across the sector.
Yeah, I think that the traditional television station and how they commission and stuff is also dangerous because when you're going to put everything into one building, then you literally have 1 or 2 or 3 people making decisions about all the funding and where it's going to land. And so, we were being told that, hey, everything's going to be channeled back into whakaata Māori, but there was no change in structure. It wasn't like, the NZ On Air where they have a board that selects all the funding or the TMP. It was going to be the same structure with way more power and funding and ability, but also just more than plurality of voices. I think that when you have more than one, you have competition, and competition creates better programming.
Agree. So finally, and it feels like in some ways that your whole kind of careers, and particularly your relationship, was leading to the establishment of the Aotearoa Media Collective, which, is now kind of very well established, got a bunch of shows kind of on it, and that it is made and it is making. Tell me about that. What the intent is, and how you would like it to be understood.
I think for us, Aotearoa Media Collective, initially it started off as our side hustle because when the hui was off air, we needed to keep feeding our children, and we've got 9 of them, so it's quite a lot of people to feed.
40-hour contract.
Yeah, a 40-week,
right.
42-week contract.
3 months that you had no money, yeah.
So it started off as a side hustle, and we just wanted to make little programs that we felt really passionate about, like Mātangi Rea, which is about Māori political legacies. But then, one of the good things about leaving Māori television and the challenge and the difficulties that we faced then is that we realised that through those big scary decisions, big growth comes. And we had been very happily ensconced at Great Southern Television, where we were treated very well for 7 years. And we realised, as Mihi says so well, that it was time for us to get scared again. So we wanted to turn Aotearoa Media Collective into our primary income and to grow this kaupapa together and
other people.
Yeah, and other people as well.
Because, as you know, the industry is lacking in some areas, particularly production managers and all those kinds of things. And we wanted to be a place where people could come and make mistakes and learn and get up on their feet and give things a go, like we'd been given that opportunity.
Yeah, we wanted to create the opportunities for other people that we felt that we didn't get, that we had to scrap and fight for, and that we could spot these amazing young talented people that we work with, like our production manager, Natasha Vella, who, came from a background in logistics, and we were like, trucking. We're like, this girl has amazing manakitanga, and she is logistical whiz.
She can park those trucks all over the country all at once.
Send product everywhere.
I'm pretty sure that she can come and rule our roost, and she's been great. But like her, and like all of the young people that we trained on the Kōmero, which is the Māori, it was just a 6-hour online Māori journalism course. We pushed 174 people through, and it was incredible. And the feedback that we got from them, we're on Zoom, but you could still feel that wairua coming through their mauri, through their eyes. They were just so excited about doing journalism, like having a go, having people, we brought in Stacey Morrison's and Shannon's and Guy on, and, having these people speak directly to them and answer their questions. So we love that kind of stuff. I mean, sometimes we don't love making it because it can be quite tiring, the training stuff, but we love what we achieve at the end of it. So that's what Aotearoa Media Collective is. But also Aotearoa Media Collective is because if we didn't have it, we literally probably wouldn't be working in the industry, because we don't get those jobs that some other people get, Honestly, I think about Annabelle, and she's being recognised as the best executive and whatever, but she's never been tapped on the shoulder to come and run this newsroom, come and head this up. Like those opportunities, no one's asking me to present any big mainstream shows, Those opportunities just don't come to us, so you have to create your own. And my wish is that all of that work that we did I know the merger's not going through, but there are some really easy pieces of the jigsaw we can put together, not us, because we're not in the powerful positions, but the heads of RNZ, the heads of TVNZ, the funders, the government, the iwi networks, whakaata Māori, bring them back into the fold again. We can actually make this happen. It won't cost too much money. We can do some really simple things, and it would be great to see some cohesion, is that the word, in our industry.
Kia ora. Well, look, I feel like we could also do this could be like a 5-part podcast. There's so much that you've done, and also your perspectives on all this stuff are so fascinating. But Samuel has given us the hard word that we are done. But it's been amazing, and just really, really appreciate your time and your mahi.
Kia ora.
Nā koe.
Tēnā kōrua.
That was The Fold, brought to you by our partners at O Media, making brands unmissable and public spaces better across Aotearoa. Huge thanks to O Media for sponsoring this episode of The Fold and enabling us to make unmissable connections with Kiwis.
K-pop to me means more than just listening to music. It's learning to be myself.
The spin-off's new documentary, K-Pollies, follows 3 Pacific youth obsessed with K-pop. In a one-off documentary, see what they've found in Korean pop culture and how they bridge it with their own.
When you start dressing, looking different, everyone side-eyes you. But in K-pop, they're just like, no, celebrate yourself.
Watch K-Pollies today at thespinoff.co.nz/videos. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.